I found out my daughter was blackmailing me on a Tuesday. The kind of Tuesday that tastes like old coffee and regret. "You want to see him? Then pay for his private school," her text read, followed by, "And remember, if you argue with me, he won't come to see you on weekends anymore." I paid. Month after month, because I love my grandson like oxygen. Then I saw the glossy photo on her Facebook. My daughter grinning behind the wheel of a brand new SUV, leather seats and a bow the size of a Great Dane. And that's when the final card slid off the stack. There was no private school. There never had been. If you're ready for this journey, make sure you hit that subscribe button and give this a like so you don't miss the updates. And let me know in the comments what city you're watching from. It's always lovely to see where everyone is. I'm Linda, 64, retired community college bursar, and a woman who knows her way around spreadsheets, tuition ledgers, and the particular brand of chaos that comes from loving people who don't always love you back the right way. I raised my daughter, Bree, on coupons and casseroles after her father left. I did without so she could do with. And when she had my grandson, Caleb, I felt like the universe admitted it was late and handed me flowers. Caleb is the kind of kid who counts clouds and then asks if he can name them. He's 8 with a cowlick that never sits down and a smile that makes strangers wave back. The first time he toddled into my kitchen, he pointed at my fridge magnets, states from yard sales and road trips, and declared, "We live in Ohio, Nana, but I think your heart lives in all of them." He was 2. I was done for. Bree and I have always had friction. She's charming, funny, and allergic to the second step of any plan. In her 20s, she skipped jobs like stones across a pond: barista, photographer, wellness coach, payroll clerk for 3 weeks. She was late 4 times. Caleb's dad drifted out the door the day the hospital bracelet came off. His contribution has been precisely 12 Christmas texts and a gift card that expired before we found it under the tree. So it was mostly me and Bree, and then more and more, it was me and Caleb. Friday night sleepovers at my house, pancakes shaped like dinosaurs, the Muppets Take Manhattan until his eyelids surrendered. That little boy gave my late middle years a soundtrack. The money started after 2nd grade. "Nana, my school has houses like in Harry Potter," Caleb announced. It seemed odd. The public elementary didn't do houses. Bree explained, airy as a summer dress, that she'd enrolled him in a small private academy across town where they really get gifted kids. She said it came with uniforms and a Latin motto and a price tag that made my molars ache. "It's $1,200 a month, Mom." She said, "They gave me a partial scholarship, but I still need help or they'll drop him mid-year." She tugged at her sleeve and didn't quite meet my eyes. "You want to keep seeing him on weekends, right? Stability is important. I can't have you talking me out of this." The word I'm looking for now is extortion. The word I used then was okay. I wired the first payment that day, then the 2nd, then the 10th. I stopped tallying because when you're paying ransom for your own joy, math just feels like salt. I trimmed my grocery list, I canceled the Book of the Month Club and started checking mysteries out from the library like a teenager with a fake ID. For a while, I believed. She sent me a blurry photo of Caleb in what might have been a gray polo or a gray t-shirt, standing in front of a brick wall that could have been anywhere between Boston and boredom. I got text updates about a house cup and a field trip to a museum on a day I happened to be in my yard waiting for the delivery guy. The school bus stopped at the corner. Caleb hopped off in jeans and a Marvel hoodie. "Hey, Nana!" he yelled, waving so hard his backpack smacked him in the ear. The museum trip was on a Wednesday. The school bus doesn't usually serve private academies. That's when the doubt slid in like a draft you can't see but feel in your knees. Do they have a school bus? I asked later when Bree came by to pick him up. She was wearing new shoes, block heels, gold buckle, the kind that creak like a sermon when you walk. Sometimes, she said, out of breath, temporary until we figure out carpool. What's the school called again? I tried to make it sound conversational. Bree's eyes got glassy for a half second. Hillcrest Academy. You know that. She cleared a plate without eating and left with the kiss that missed my cheek by an inch. That night, I sat with my laptop and the soft thud of my heart in my ears. I found Hillcrest Academy, a venerable place with gardens, a Latin motto, and an admissions office that finally returned my call after lunch the next day. I'm just trying to figure out if my grandson's tuition is current, I said in my best helpful grandma voice. I don't want to step on any toes, just want to direct my gifts correctly. His name is Caleb, and his mother is Bree. The admissions coordinator was polite, careful. I'm sorry, Mrs. Carter, she said. We don't have a Caleb with that surname enrolled. She checked alternate spellings, grades, even hyphenations. No Caleb, no scholarship, no record. I thanked her, hung up, and sat so still DeCat came to check if I was a statue now. In my chest, something old and steel-strong groaned back to life, the part of me that used to balance budgets with pennies left over, the woman who left a man and kept the house, the mother who raised a girl who doesn't know how much she's loved because she can't stop measuring love in receipts. I didn't confront Bree right away. Leaping is how you twist an ankle. I needed this to be steady. I folded laundry, I made soup, I played Candyland with Caleb and listened to him tell me about Mrs. T, who smells like cinnamon gum, and reads them Charlotte's Web in a voice that makes him feel quiet in the middle. I asked what house he was in, and he wrinkled his nose. Mrs. T says we're all one big family, he said. Public school kind of talk. My sleeves itched. The next weekend, Bree posted the SUV. Big bow, glossy paint. Blessed and thriving, the caption read, with 5 sparkling emojis. The dealership name was on the plate frame. People commented heart faces. I watched the hearts climb like ants on a picnic. That night, I opened a new spreadsheet. If I was going to take back my story, I needed columns. Column A, payment dates. Column B, amounts. Column C, purpose as stated by Bree. Column D, evidence. Texts, screenshots, voicemails. Column E, reality. I have worked in the bursar's office through 3 presidents and 4 software rollouts. Give me chaos and I will comb it. By midnight, I had 7 months of tuition wired directly to Bree's account, a few activity fee Venmos, and 1 urgent uniform replacement that coincided with a mall sale on athleisure. I listened to Bree's voice messages, the tremble she put in it on the ones near rent day, the little laugh when she was feeling flush. I wanted to be wrong. I wanted to be the fool who got to stay a fool because it kept a door open where the light is. The next step was to protect Caleb's future without detonating his present. If I burned the bridge, who would be stranded on the far side? Not me. I'm old enough to build a raft out of driftwood. A child cannot. I called an attorney. I didn't want to go to war. I wanted a map. I'm not asking to be his parent, I just want to make sure he's safe and his school is real, and I'm not financing an SUV disguised as education. The attorney was a calm woman with the same shoes I wore in 1992. She said, "You have options," sliding a notepad toward me. "First, stop paying anyone directly. Set up a 529 plan in your name with him as the beneficiary. It can only be used for qualified education expenses. If she wants him in a private school, the school can invoice you directly, or you can pay the plan to the school. Second, document everything. Third, understand that withholding access to a child as leverage might be relevant in family court, but we move carefully," she paused, "and don't record anyone without consent. This is a 2-party consent state." I raised a lawyer in my head just for this. I'll stay squeaky clean. That week, I opened a 529 plan and funded it with the amount I would have sent Bree for tuition. When she asked for the next month's payment, I smiled and said,
Great news! I started an education fund for Caleb. The school can bill it directly. Silence, then a flare of temper. Mom, that's not how this works. I already paid the deposit. They won't. It's complicated. Can you just wire it like before? I'm simplifying. You're busy. Let's make this easy. She went quiet for a beat. If you start making this difficult, I'll have to rethink visits. He needs stability. I looked out the window at my bird feeder where a cardinal was shouldering a sparrow out of the way with all the diplomacy of a toddler. He does. That's why I'm making sure his school is paid directly. Send me the school's billing contact.
Bree stopped by the next day in the SUV. She left it idling in my driveway, the engine purring like a lioness. "You are not going to embarrass me," she said, flipping her hair. "These are my choices." "Then stand by them," I said, that old steel warming in my voice. "The school's name will be on an invoice. So far, all I see is a car note." She regarded me like a woman measuring whether her mother still had a soft place she could land. "I'm his mother," she said. "You don't get to control me." "This isn't about control," I said. "It's about truth. I will always fund truth." She left in a storm. The exhaust hung in the air like a rumor. I didn't text or call. I baked a peach cobbler and took half to my neighbor, Ruth, who knows everything about everyone and wears pearls to mow the lawn. That's the thing about being my age. You learn to tend your own nervous system. It doesn't mean you let yourself be used. It means you breathe while you plan. Sunday, Caleb came over, quiet and sweet. He asked if the cat would like to play pirates. I poured lemonade and asked how school was. "We did a science thing with eggs," he said. "Mrs. T said if we have a problem, we can try 3 solutions before we ask for help, like check the directions, try again, then ask a friend." "That's a good rule," I said, writing it down on my grocery list where I'd be sure to see it again. After he went home, I made my next move. If Bree wouldn't send an invoice, I would invite an invoice to come meet us. I called Hillcrest Academy again and asked for a tour. "For my daughter and grandson," I said. "They're making a switch, and I want to see it before I commit more money." The admissions coordinator, who remembered my voice, scheduled us for Friday afternoon. She said, "We've got a campus tour and a quick sit-down. Bring any questions." Thursday evening, I made spaghetti and invited Bree to dinner. "I scheduled a tour," I said, as casually as one can when asking a fox to come admire the henhouse locks. "Friday at 4. We'll go together. I'm excited to see where Caleb spends his days." Her fork clanged against her plate. "Mom, no, the school doesn't do tours mid-year. It's a special program, and they're strict." "The admissions said 4 o'clock, I replied. "We'll just listen and ask about financial aid." They said the word scholarship, and I nearly packed a marching band. She stared at me, then at the clock, then at Caleb, who was painting a picture of a dragon that looked exactly like my cat. "I can't, Friday," she said. "I have a thing. I'll pick you up. I'll drive." She looked like she wanted to swallow her tongue. "And if Friday doesn't work, we can always invite them to bill our 529 plan directly. They'll work with us. They told me how easy it is." Bree didn't come to dinner again for 2 weeks. The SUV appeared and vanished, a glossy fish in the street's river. Caleb's weekend visit came, then didn't. Then came with a text that said, "He has a cough." And he arrived with soccer cleats and a trophy from a league I didn't know he was in. I emailed the league administrator listed on the little plastic plaque and asked what school they were affiliated with. She wrote back that most of their kids came from Lincoln Elementary. Lincoln Elementary is 4 blocks from Bree's apartment. Mrs. T probably smells like cinnamon gum there too. I was careful with my anger. I set it down like a hot pan and let it cool until I could hold it without burning either of us. I checked my 529 plan. I updated my spreadsheet. I printed out the texts and tucked them into a manila folder labeled Education. Then I called a friend.
Jeannie, who runs a nonprofit that helps grandparents navigate school systems. She's the kind of woman who keeps pens in her hair and kindness in her purse. Bring what you have, she said. We'll make a plan that doesn't burn the village. We met at a coffee shop where the barista knows my name and spells it right. I slid the folder across to Jeannie. She scanned, her mouth flattening into a thin line. This is not new, she said, but it doesn't have to be normal. What do? I asked. I want to keep seeing him. I want him in good schools, but I am not financing lies and leather trim. 3 prongs, she said. 1, lock the money to the child, not the parent. Through the 529. You did that. 2, get eyes on his actual school. Introduce yourself to his teacher. Be present. 3, if she threatens access again, you talk to a family mediator, low conflict if possible, and document it. Don't threaten, don't escalate, just be steady. I can do steady, I said. My coffee tasted like resolve.
The next day, I went to Lincoln Elementary's office with a tray of bakery cookies and my best Nana smile. I'm Caleb's grandmother, I told the secretary, who wore a sweater with stitched pumpkins. I wanted to introduce myself. I'm in his life a lot and would love to volunteer. Schools love grandparents who show up with snacks and patience. Within 10 minutes, I had a background check form, a schedule for the fall book fair, and a sign-up for Mystery Reader Day. Mrs. T was exactly as Caleb described, cinnamon gum and a voice like a cardigan. We chatted while the kids lined up for recess. He's a good kid, she said softly, and my chest hurt with love. Smart. He could use some steadiness. She didn't know she'd handed me a compass. When I left, I sat in my car and cried a little, the quiet kind of crying that's half grief and half relief. Then I straightened my shoulders and did what all women my age know how to do. I ran errands while the world was on fire. On Saturday, Bree texted, "We need to talk." She arrived without Caleb. The SUV gleamed in the driveway, reflecting my maple tree like it had swallowed the sky. She came in hot. "Mom, people are talking," she said. "You're going behind my back, showing up at his school. That's not your place." "It's exactly my place," I said. "I'm his grandmother. I love him. I'm also the person paying for his private school, which does not exist." Her face did something complicated. Anger, shame, calculation. She tried, "I told you we were between programs. It's a bridge until he starts next semester." "Then you won't mind if I pay the academy directly," I said, "or if we take that tour." She wavered. "If you keep pushing," she said, her voice dropping to a threat, "you won't see him on weekends." I felt the burn in my belly, but kept my voice even. "Bree," I said, "don't make me choose between enabling a lie and loving my grandson. You will lose that contest, and I don't want you to." For a second, I saw my little girl, the one with the scraped knees and the stubborn jaw. Then she blinked, and the SUV keys jingled in her hand. "You always think you're better than me," she said, turning to go. "You always have." "No," I said softly, but the door was already open and the engine already booming. I gave it 2 days, which is how long it takes for pride to cool enough to bend. Then I texted her, "Bringing dinner Wednesday. Caleb's favorites. Hope to see you both." She didn't answer. I brought dinner anyway. Mac and cheese with crunchy crumbs, green beans, apples baked with cinnamon. Caleb hugged me like I was the sun, and he was a cat finding a square of warmth on the floor. While Bree and I stood in the kitchen, I saw a thick envelope on the table. Lincoln Elementary, emblazoned with the district seal. I didn't touch it. I didn't have to. Caleb's name was printed on the corner, and the words Parent-Teacher Conference were peeking out like a handkerchief. "Conference next week?" I asked lightly. "Want me to watch him afterwards?" Bree shoved the letter under a magazine. "I've got it," she said. The magazine was open to an article about
love languages, and money. I swallowed a laugh that wanted to choke me. "Okay," I said. "If you change your mind, I'll be home." That night, I emailed Mrs. T and asked if grandparents could attend conferences. "We welcome consistent adults in the child's life," she replied, attaching a sign-up link. I kept my slot next to Bree's, not because I wanted to ambush her, but because I wanted to be present for the only truth that mattered, the one about how Caleb was doing. Bree texted the next morning, "Cancel your slot, that's for parents." I replied, "I'm a guardian of his time and a contributor to his education. I'll be there." I put my phone on Do Not Disturb and went to water the ferns. I know this part is hard to hear, but it's important. The truth was about to come out, and it was going to be glorious. Conference day arrived with rain that made the parking lot a ballet of umbrellas. We showed up separately. Bree looked sleek in a blazer that didn't exist 2 months ago. I wore my grandma armor, which is to say, comfortable shoes and a cardigan with pockets deep enough to carry a childhood. Mrs. T greeted us. She said, "I'm so glad you're both here," and motioned to tiny chairs that make you feel like your knees are a myth. She talked about Caleb's reading group, his kindness to a boy named Miguel who stutters, and his math facts, which are less facts and more suggestions, as she gently put it. She asked about his sleep. She asked about homework routines. We answered like a duet that hadn't rehearsed. After, in the hallway, Bree hissed, "You are humiliating me." I replied, "I am loving him. Only one of those has legs. The other wears heels and gets tired."
She took a step closer. "Back off, Mom." I held up my hands. "I will back off from any lie, but I will not back off from the truth that I am his grandmother and you are using him like a toll booth. That ends now." We walked to the parking lot in silence. She unlocked the SUV, then turned back to me with a face I couldn't read. "If you make this ugly, you won't see him," she said. "I mean it." "I heard you," I said, "and I'm sure the mediator will too." She flinched at the word. "You wouldn't." "Low conflict," I said. "We'll sit down with someone who can help us build a schedule that doesn't swing like a door in a windstorm, or we can keep doing it your way and see where a judge lands. You decide." I got in my car, hands shaking, and let the rain drum on the roof like applause. The next morning, I sent Bree a clean, calm email, because judges love clean, calm emails. I summarized our conversation, proposed a standing weekend schedule, and attached the 529 plan information again. I wrote, "I will no longer provide direct payments for tuition. The education fund is available for qualified expenses. If you enroll him in a private school, have the school invoice me directly." Then I wrote, "I love you. I'm not your enemy." I CC'd myself and printed it for the file. Then I called Hillcrest to reschedule our tour for the following week. It wasn't about catching Bree in a lie anymore. It was about giving her a dignified exit ramp. If she came, she could confess. If she didn't, the door would stand open in the admissions office with her name on it and all the truth in the air like perfume. She surprised me. "Fine," she texted. "I'll go." We met at the academy gates, brick and ivy and a fountain shaped like a boy reading a book to a fish. Bree wore sunglasses, even though the sun was sulking. The admissions coordinator approached with a practiced smile and a pamphlet. "Welcome back, Mrs. Carter," she said to me, not unkindly. We walked past classrooms with projectors the size of my first television and a library that smelled like old trees and ambition. The coordinator chatted about curriculum, class sizes, community service. Bree murmured at the right moments, nodding like she was translating her own story into this one as we moved. At the end, in her office, the coordinator smiled. "Any questions?" "Yes," I said, folding my hands. "We'd like to set up direct billing to our 529 plan for Caleb's tuition." "Of course,"
she said, reaching for a form. We'll need his full name and current grade to pull his applicant file. Bree's lips parted. I watched the moment she realized she'd walked into a mirror and was about to see herself. Our application, she began. The coordinator's eyebrows flicked, polite. If you haven't applied yet, we can certainly begin the process. The deadline for fall is next month. Bree made a small sound I recognized from when she was 6 and caught with a cookie behind her back. We're between programs, she said, the words stout and useless. I smiled at the coordinator. Thank you, I said. This was very helpful. We'll be in touch. Back in the parking lot beneath the gaze of the reading boy and his fish, Bree rounded on me. You set me up. I corrected. I offered you a chance to tell the truth in a place where it matters. You declined. You don't understand what it's like, she snapped, voice cracking. Being a single mom, being judged, having to make everything look fine so people don't think you're failing. She gestured toward the school. You think I don't want this? You think I'm not trying? I think you're scared, and pride is doing the talking. Pride would sell your child's weekends to buy a car that gets you a wave in the drop-off line. Pride whispers that you can't disappoint me, so instead you betrayed me. Pride will drive you until there's nothing left but the road. She looked away, toward the SUV, her jaw working. I needed something good. So pick something good, I said, gentler. Pick the truth. Pick a routine for your son. Pick a budget. Pick a school he actually attends. I took a breath. Pick me. Let me help the right way. For a heartbeat, I thought I had her. Then her eyes hardened. If you turn on me, you'll lose him. Bree, I said quietly, if I let you keep doing this, we'll all lose him, most of all you. She got in the SUV and left me standing there with the boy and the fish, who, for what it's worth, looked like taking turns reading to each other. I drove home and put the kettle on, because even generals need tea.
That night, I wrote out a plan with bullet points, because bullet points are how I avoid shooting myself in the foot. Continue funding 529. No direct payments. Establish a predictable weekend schedule through a mediator. If refused, file for grandparent visitation enforcement. Our state allows it with demonstrated involvement. Build a paper trail of goodwill and involvement. Volunteer at school, attend events, be present. Give Bree safe off-ramps to apologize, privately or with the mediator. Protect Caleb from the fallout. No adult details. No using him as a spy. Then, because I am my own mother's daughter, I added 6, cook, sleep, walk, laugh at TV shows with clever dogs. Friday, I got an email from the soccer league about a regional game. Saturday, I showed up. Bree saw me on the bleachers and looked like she wanted the earth to open up and swallow me, her, and the concession stand. I waved and handed Caleb a banana, which he ate like it was a magic spell. After the game, I took a risk and introduced myself to 2 moms I'd seen Bree chatting with before. I'm Caleb's Nana, I said. I bring snacks and bad jokes. One of them, a woman with a ponytail and the energy of a motivational poster, said, "Oh, Bree said you were helping with his private school. That's so great." I smiled with all my teeth. I'm helping with his education, I said. I'm very proud of where he goes to school now. Bree hovered, seething. Later, she texted, "Stop trying to make me look bad." I didn't answer that one. Not all invitations need an RSVP. The mediator's office was beige, which seems to be the law. Bree fidgeted, tapping her nails against a legal pad. The mediator, a square-shouldered woman with kind eyes, talked about schedules, about conflict, and the small humans who get caught in the slipstream. Bree tried to make it about control. I kept making it about routine. He needs to know where he is on Fridays, I said. He needs to know who's picking him up. He needs to know that grown-ups keep their promises. In the end, we left with a draft that gave me 2 weekends a month, dinner on Wednesdays, and a policy that said changes require 48 hours of notice unless there's a fever or a hurricane. Bree signed, lips thin, eyes glittering. I slept well for the first time in weeks. He was about to get exactly what he deserved, and I had a front row seat. Don't go anywhere. 2 days later, I got a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. "Hi, this is Mia from Western Credit Union. We're following up about the cosigner application for a personal loan for Miss Bree Carter. We see you're listed as your employer reference, and we just need to confirm a few details." Employer reference? I played the message twice, then a third time, my pulse tapping at my temples. I have not been anyone's employer since I retired. I certainly wasn't Bree's. I called back. "There must be a mistake," I said, keeping my voice sweet as tea that would make your teeth stick together. "Oh, she listed Carter Consulting, LLC. Is that not you?" I sat down. "I don't own a consulting company," I said, "and I didn't authorize being listed as a reference." "I'm so sorry," Mia said, sounding suddenly careful. "We'll note that." After I hung up, I stared at the manila folder on my dining table. It seemed I'd need a new label, loans. I didn't confront Bree right away. Instead, I went to the county clerk's website, where you can search business registrations while wearing slippers. There it was, Carter Consulting, LLC, registered 3 weeks prior. The registered agent was an online service. The phone number was Bree's. My first thought was not printable. My second thought was, she is in trouble deeper than leather seats. My third thought was action. I called my attorney. "I'm not here for vengeance," I said, which was true. "I'm here to keep my name clean and my grandson stable." "You're doing fine," she said. "We'll send a cease and desist regarding the business registration using your address and a statement to the credit union that you are not and never have been her employer, and will attach the mediation agreement, which will be relevant when she attempts to withhold visitation again." "Again?" I said. She made a sympathetic sound lawyers make when they've seen this movie and know the ending is a court date. They often do. The cease and desist went out on Monday. On Wednesday, Bree showed up on my porch, eyes wet and furious. "How could you?" she demanded. "You're tanking my loan. That was going to consolidate things. Don't use my name to build sandcastles. The tide comes either way." "You're going to be alone?" she shot back. "That's what you want, right? To be right and alone?" I swallowed hard. I want a life where I can look at myself in the mirror and recognize the woman looking back. I want a life where my grandson doesn't learn that love is the price you pay to keep a secret. She stared at me like a child reaching for a cookie and finding a carrot. It didn't satisfy. She left. I walked around the block and thought about all the mothers I've known. My own, my friends, the women who sent checks to colleges so their kids could buy ramen. We do impossible math. We stretch, we give, we forgive. But somewhere along the way, we must teach our children that mercy is not a debit card. Friday night, Caleb came over with a new book about astronauts. We made a fort out of blankets and gravity. He fell asleep with one hand in the bag of pretzels like he'd reached for one last star and found enough. Bree didn't text that weekend. I didn't text her either. The mediator's paper sat on the counter like a spell, and for once, we both obeyed it. On Sunday evening, while Caleb colored a picture of a rocket with a cat in the window, I caught a notification on my phone. Bree had posted on the neighborhood group. "Warning, scammer. Elderly woman using child to grift money for fake education fund. Watch out." She didn't name me, but she didn't have to. The comments poured in, sticky and loud. I put my phone down and breathed. This, I realized, was the next move. Public shame as currency, with me as the bill. I looked at Caleb, at his careful little tongue peeking out as he colored inside the lines. In my chest, that old steel hummed, steady and low. I had not started this war. I would not fight it with the weapons she chose, but I would win it.
And just when she thought she had me backed into a corner, she forgot who she was dealing with. Stick with me because you'll want to see how this plays out. I didn't clap back in the comments, tempting as it was. I've learned you can't outshout a rumor. You have to outlast it. Instead, I brewed a pot of tea strong enough to grow hair on a billiard ball, opened my education folder, and wrote to the group moderators with the kind of calm that makes nervous people search for chairs. Hello, I'm the elderly woman referenced in a recent post. Here are redacted screenshots of my 529 plan, the mediator's draft visitation schedule, and the email where I offered to pay any school directly. I will not argue in public, and I won't name my daughter to spare my grandson. I respectfully request removal of the post and a reminder about defamation. By the time my tea needed warming, a moderator replied, "Post removed, OP warned for violating community rules. We're sorry." They pinned a gentle reminder about not weaponizing the group for personal disputes. My name was never mentioned, but anyone paying attention could see where the arrow had been pointed and where it failed to stick. I didn't gloat. I watered my African violets and called Jeannie. Round 1 to team sanity, I told her. Round 1 is just the warm-up. Keep receipts, keep your head. The mediator scheduled a follow-up. This time I asked for a non-disparagement clause, a simple line that said neither party would malign the other in public or private, where it might reach the child. Bree rolled her eyes so hard I worried they'd never return. Fine, whatever. The mediator added it. This protects Caleb, she said gently. It keeps adult problems in adult spaces. I keep doing my quiet work. I volunteered at Lincoln's Book Fair and sorted so many paperbacks, I started shelving my own thoughts by author's last name. I showed up at Mystery Reader Day and did my best Kermit voice for The Frog and Toad Treasury. Caleb looked like a small lit window in a winter street, gloam you could see from the sidewalk. At home, the binder got a new tab, School Direct Support. I funded his cafeteria account online so he'd always have hot lunch. I sent a check to the PTA earmarked for field trips, with a note saying if any kid's fee came up short, consider it covered. I paid the soccer league fee directly and emailed the coach a thank you, and I talked to Mrs. T about the science fair. I offered to bring extra trifolds and glue sticks for kids who needed them. All of this went into the binder with dates, amounts, and confirmations. If Bree wanted to twist money into a leash, I would turn it into a ladder. She could climb with us or watch us go. Bree noticed the first time the cafeteria charge didn't hit her bank. "Did you do that?" she texted.
I did, I replied. I want to take things off your plate, not hand you a new one. She sent back a single dot. Then, thanks. Progress, I told myself, is a sloth on a treadmill. It moves, but you have to be patient and also a little bit amused. 2 weeks later, she sent me a PDF invoice. Deposit due for spring term at Hillcrest, her message read. The invoice looked professional if you ignored the part where the school's logo was blurrier than a UFO sighting. The email address was billing@hillcrest-acd.com, which, if you've ever worked around tuition fraud, gives you the same feeling you get when someone tries to sell you a Rolex whose second hand ticks like an angry metronome. I flagged the email and forwarded it to the actual Hillcrest admissions coordinator with a note. Is this real? If so, please bill the 529 directly. The coordinator replied within the hour. This is not our billing address or format. Please be cautious. I added fraudulent invoice attempt to the binder and wrote the date in tidy numbers. I did not scream. I made lentil soup. I listened to a podcast about birds who fake broken wings to distract predators. I was learning from the masters. That weekend, Bree canceled my Friday pickup at 3:17 p.m., 19 minutes before I was supposed to get Caleb. Car trouble, she texted. We'll try next week. The mediator's paper might as well have whistled from the counter. I took a breath and typed, per our agreement, we need 48 hours notice except for emergencies. I can send an Uber with a car seat or come get him. Which do you prefer? No, she wrote. It's not safe. Then I'll come. I sent, grabbed my keys, and walked out the door in the time it takes a kettle to decide to scream. She didn't answer.
When I knocked, she opened the door 2 inches. Caleb's backpack hung on a chair. He had his shoes on and hope in his eyes. "Hey, Nana," he said, peeking around her hip. Bree hovered, indecision doing a tango on her features. The neighbor across the hall, Mrs. Patel, who leaves tamarind candies in a bowl for passing children, poked her head out. "You're taking him?" she asked, friendly but firm. "Yes," I said, nodding at the mediator's schedule in my hand. "We keep our promises in this family." Bree looked at the paper, at Mrs. Patel, at Caleb's face like a sunrise she was considering ignoring. Then she moved aside. "Back Sunday," she said. "Not kind, not cruel, but importantly, compliant." He came. We made popcorn. We built a Lego city that had more parks than roads because that was the kind of night we needed. I tucked him in with the raggedy quilt my mother made, the one that smells like dryer sheets and history. Monday morning, the mediator emailed a reminder, per the agreement, last-minute changes need to be actual emergencies. I understand cars break, but in those cases, alternate transportation or pickup is encouraged. I pictured the quiet text exchange, the neighbor's head, my steady voice. We were building a wall of small stones. You can't knock down a wall like that by shouting. You need a plan and a permit. A week later, Western Credit Union called again, this time to confirm that I was not, in fact, the registered agent of Carter Consulting LLC, and that I had filed a notice with the Secretary of State to remove my address from the registration. The clerk had sent Bree a letter demanding she change the registered address and amend the filing. "We appreciate your prompt attention," the union rep said, earnestly. "We take identity accuracy seriously." "So do I said. "Good luck." The SUV started to tell its own story. Bree posted less about it. The neighborhood kids remembered when she'd offered rides to practice in a burst of glossy generosity, and they noticed when the offers ceased. Pride has a high monthly payment. Eventually, you miss one. At the end of the month, Bree showed up with a stack of brochures. "There's a summer academy. Real, okay? And it's perfect for him. Robotics, chess, they even have a garden. I want him to go." "What's it called?" I asked, turning the brochure over. The paper was thick and the fonts weren't bleeding from inconsistent margins. The website QR code led to a real site with staff photos where no one looked like they'd been stolen from a dental office catalog. "This looks promising," I said. "Have the academy send the invoice to the 529. I'll cover it." Her eyes widened. She hadn't expected the yes to have so many thorns. "You will?"
"I will, for Caleb," I said. "Always for Caleb." She swallowed. "Thanks." It came out like a pebble pushed out by a river. It felt almost normal that afternoon, like the old days when we stood shoulder to shoulder at the sink after dinner, when we passed plates like a baton. I let myself enjoy it the way you enjoy a warm day in April, without packing away your sweaters. The invoice came. Legitimate. Clean. Paid. The director sent a welcome email and a packing list. Sunscreen, water bottle, curiosity. I printed it and taped it to my fridge. Progress, I told myself again, is a sloth on a treadmill, but sometimes the sloth smiles. Midweek, Mrs. T invited me to Grand Friends Day. I wore my good earrings and brought a shoebox of photos from when Bree was 8 and insisted on wearing a cape to school for 2.5 Tuesdays. Caleb introduced me to his friends like I was somebody, which is the nicest promotion I've ever received. During free reading, a little boy with a cowlick asked if I knew any space jokes. I told him the one about the restaurant on the moon. Great food, no atmosphere. And he laughed like I'd handed him a balloon. On the way out, the assistant principal stopped me. "You're Caleb's grandmother, right? He's lucky to have you." "I'm the lucky one," I said, and meant it so much it warmed the backs of my eyes. That night, Bree texted, "Saw the picture of you at school. Thank you for showing up." I stared at the words until the screen dimmed. Showing up isn't glamorous. It won't buy you an SUV, but it's the currency that always spends. I know this part is hard to hear, but it's important. The truth was about to come out, and it was going to be glorious. The invoice scam hadn't been Bree's only experiment. A month later, I got a notice from my homeowner's insurance that a business was registered at my address, and my policy might need adjusting. I called, explained, sent the cease and desist letter, and the agent apologized profusely. "We'll correct that," she said. "We'll also notate the account for any future attempts." I put a copy in the binder. Then, I called the Secretary of State's office and asked if there were penalties for filing false information on a business registration. There were, of the administrative variety. A notice went out, a small fine came back. It wasn't prison stripes, but it was a paper cut in the right spot. Jeannie introduced me to the school social worker, who invited Bree to a budgeting workshop that came with free childcare and pizza that tasted like cardboard but counted as dinner. If she completes 4 sessions, the social worker said, we can connect her to a program that matches debt payments up to a certain amount. I passed it along with a note that said, "If you go, I'll match the match." She went to the first one and texted me a picture of a worksheet about needs versus wants. "This is rude," she wrote, but there was a smiley face after it, like maybe she recognized herself in the columns. She went to the second one. She skipped the third one for reasons that didn't pass the sniff test. I didn't chase. You can set the table and make the meal. You can't make someone eat. The summer academy began. Caleb came home chattering about a robot named Sir Beeps-a-Lot and a garden bed he had adopted with a girl named Lila. He told me, "We found it praying mantis," he told me. "Eyes big as saucers. It looks like a leaf that knows secrets." "Protect it," I said. "Some things are harmless until you corner them." He fell asleep on my couch with dirt under his fingernails, a kind of happy that cannot be bought with any APR. One afternoon, the academy director called to say Caleb's emergency contact info only listed Bree, whose phone had gone straight to voicemail when he'd spiked a mild fever. "We got him comfortable and a pass, but would you like to be added as a backup?" "Please," I said, and sent over my info with a thank you and a promise to bring muffins. I texted Bree a heads up. "Add me as emergency contact everywhere. Backup is love." She left me on red for a while, then sent back a thumbs up. That night, I got a flurry of invites to school portals and apps. Absences, lunch balances, the class newsletter. I accepted them like small medals. A week later, my doorbell rang at 7 a.m. I opened it to find a tow truck idling at the curb and a man with a clipboard looking for Bree's SUV. "Wrong address," I said, heart doing a slow rumba. He thanked me and pulled away, but the message had already arrived. Pride had missed more than one payment. By noon, Bree texted, "I need $600 today. No hello, no please. I can pay the academy for the next session or put extra in the cafeteria account. I can't give cash." "This is different," she wrote. "It's an emergency. Emergencies involve Caleb's health or safety. Everything else involves planning."
She didn't respond for hours. When she did, it was, "Fine, forget it." I took a walk. The neighbors' roses were loud in the best way, throwing color like confetti onto the sidewalk. I thought about love languages and money and how my daughter had been fluent in decorations and distractions. We were working on her grammar. He was about to get exactly what he deserved, and I had a front row seat. Don't go anywhere. The next week, Bree tried a new angle. Can you sign up for the school spirit box? It's monthly, for Caleb. Directly to the school? I asked. To me, she replied. It's a parent thing. I laughed. Couldn't help it. I'll buy supplies for his class instead, I wrote, and sent a receipt for a case of pencils, a mountain of glue sticks, and enough tissues to survive flu season. That afternoon, Mrs. T sent a note home. Thank you to Caleb's family for the classroom supplies. The kids cheered. Caleb relayed it with the kind of pride you can't fake. They cheered, Nana, he said, like I scored a goal. You did, I said, for everybody. Bree didn't mention the spirit box again. I had been keeping a ledger of the tuition money I'd sent before the 529. For a long time, I told myself it was gone, the price of learning a lesson I'd hoped to never need. But sitting across from my attorney one afternoon, she looked at the columns and said, "You know, small claims exists for exactly this kind of thing." I don't want to drag her through court, I said. You want to send a signal, a legal, polite, unambiguous signal that you will not be defrauded and that there are consequences for using a child as leverage. You can file for unjust enrichment. You have proof, the school's denial, your payments, the fake invoice, the SUV purchase timing. You're not asking for the earth. You're asking for a fair piece of the sky back. What would I ask for? I said, feeling the old bursar in me tilt her glasses. Reimbursement of specific payments you can prove were solicited under false pretenses, she said. You won't get all of it. You'll get some, and you'll get a record. Often that matters more. I left with a form and a feeling like courage taking off its coat. Before I filed, I gave Bree a last off-ramp. I invited her to coffee at the place with the lemon bars she likes. I want you to understand what's coming, I told her, sliding the manila folder across the table. I am filing in small claims for a portion of what I paid under the belief it was for private school. Her jaw worked like she was chewing taffy. You would sue your own daughter? I would hold my own daughter accountable in a court that deals in facts. You can settle, you can apologize, you can offer a repayment plan, or we can let a magistrate set one. She picked at the lemon bar until it looked like a topographic map of regret. You want to ruin me, she said. I want to save you from thinking this is how the world works. I want to save Caleb from learning that love is a wallet you shake until it cries. She didn't answer. She folded the napkin into a triangle, and then a smaller triangle, until there was nothing left to fold. Then she stood and left without looking back. I filed the next morning. The clerk stamped the papers with a sound like a gavel being polite. The process server delivered the packet 2 days later. Bree texted me a picture of the envelope, a string of exclamation points, and, "How could you?" I already told you how, in person, with lemon bars. She didn't respond. She didn't have to. We were past talking. We were at the part where you either learn the dance or trip over the chorus. In the meantime, I met with the academy director about a scholarship fund. I don't want anything splashy, just a quiet way to make sure 2 kids each year get in who otherwise wouldn't. She smiled like I had handed her oxygen. We can do quiet, she said. We're very good at quiet that moves mountains. We named it after my mother, who used to say, do the good you can as quietly as you can, and let the noise be for those who need it. I did not tell Bree. I didn't want it to be a cudgel or a crown. I wanted it to be a seed. The neighborhood group moderators reached out again. Would I be willing to post a general resource list for grandparents helping with school expenses? No personal stories, just the steps you took. 529s, direct billing, school contact.
I can do that, I said. And I did. 10 bullet points, no drama, links to official sites. People thanked me. A few messaged privately with their own versions of my story. One woman wrote, I thought I was the only one being put through this. You gave me a map. Maps keep you from walking in circles. They don't alter the landscape. They help you choose better paths. The court date landed in late September, after the first leaves but before sweaters felt like a hug. The week before, Bree asked if she could borrow my copy of Charlotte's Web for Caleb's reading log. "It has my childhood scribbles," she said, trying on nostalgia like a dress she found in a thrift store. I wrapped it in tissue paper and handed it to her. "Bring it back," I said. "Some things we share, some things we return." She nodded, eyes glossy. For a second, I saw our whole story, the good parts, like a film you hold up to the light. Then she took the book and left, and I reminded myself that memory is not a contract. The day of court, I wore navy and sanity. My attorney met me there with a folder that matched mine like we'd practiced. Bree came alone, ankle deep in defiance, hair perfect, eyeliner doing the work of 12 hours of sleep. The magistrate was the kind of man who looks over his glasses at you and makes you want to behave. He listened, to me, to the admissions coordinator by phone, to the numbers that stacked up like facts always do when they're not being dodged. He listened to Bree, too, her story about wanting better, about scholarships that evaporated in the sun, about the pressure to perform motherhood on social media. "I hear you," he said finally, and I believed him. I also see bank transfers marked tuition that coincide with the car purchase, a school that has no record of this child, and a fake invoice sent to solicit more funds. The legal term is unjust enrichment. I'm ordering a repayment of a portion, $4,500, on a schedule the court will set, with payments made to the clerk for disbursement. Bree made a sound like a door closing on fingers. The magistrate held up a hand. He said, "This isn't punishment, it's correction. And it's a record that says a grandmother tried to do the right thing the right way." I exhaled. I didn't cheer. I didn't smile. I felt something like a knot loosening in a rope I'd been carrying. Outside, Bree turned to me, eyes wet and angry. "Are you happy?" I said, "No. I'm relieved. There's a difference." "You humiliated me." "No," I said. "You did that. I just refused to wear the costume." She stared at me like she was searching for the exit in a theater that had just gone dark. "What now?" I said, "Now you make the payments. You stop using Caleb as currency. You let me keep helping him directly. You take the budgeting class, or you don't, but you stop pretending the problem is my boundaries." For a second, I thought she might smirk and say something cutting. Instead, she looked very small. She said, "I don't know how to fix it." It wasn't a confession. It was a tired truth. I said, "You start. Bad piano players don't get better by staring at the keys." She huffed a laugh, unwillingly. "You're annoying." "Consistent," I corrected. Consistency just sounds like annoying when you want the answer to be different every time. We walked to our cars in silence. Her SUV was gone. In its place sat a compact sedan with dealer plates and no glossy bow. It wasn't a punishment, it was a reset. Pride had been repossessed. Practicality had pulled into the spot. Over the next month, the first payment arrived at the clerk's office and then in my mailbox, converted into a check with a stub that looked very official. I deposited it into the scholarship fund. I didn't tell Bree. She didn't ask. Some stories you don't tell because the telling would turn a good thing into a lesson, and not the right kind. Caleb kept growing in the way children do when grown-ups stopped hoarding the sunlight. He read Charlotte's Web and asked me if I thought anyone would write a book about a grandmother who was a pig who saved a spider. "I think you're blending metaphors," I said, "but I'd read it." He laughed and then got serious, and then asked if I would come to family science night to see Sir Beeps-a-Lot try to navigate a maze. "He needs encouragement," he said solemnly. "I'll bring pom-poms," I promised.
Bree sent fewer emergency texts. The budgeting class sent me a certificate with her name that said she'd completed 3 out of 4 sessions. I taped it inside my cabinet where I keep the vanilla. Every time I reached for sweetness, I remembered. Progress, treadmill, sloth.
Then came the call that made the hair on my arms stand up. The academy director asked if I would consider speaking quietly to a donor about our little scholarship fund. Nothing public, she said, just context. Someone wants to match what you're doing. It would have been easy to put my name on it then, to let it be known that I had turned a mess into a mission. But I remembered my mother's rule. I'll talk, I said, without credit. The donor turned out to be a retired engineer who had never had children and didn't trust robots, but did trust kids who built them. He matched, and then he added a little extra because glue sticks multiply like rabbits, he said gruffly. I went home grinning like someone who'd stolen fire and used it to warm a room. And just when he thought he had me backed into a corner, he forgot who he was dealing with. Stick with me because you'll want to see how this plays out. I hadn't forgotten the neighborhood group either. Quietly, with the moderator's blessing, I started a monthly Nana's Notes post. 3 tips, 1 resource, 1 recipe. Simple, direct. Pay the school, not the story, I wrote in one. Bring pizza to the PTA meeting. They'll open doors you didn't know were there, in another. Never negotiate with the timeline set by a temper. The comments stayed kind, and when someone got spicy, the moderators sprinkled water on them like they were a grease fire. A woman DM'd me to ask if I'd consider a small private support group for grandparents in our zip code. Coffee and strategies, she wrote. We met in the library's small conference room, 6 of us, clutching mugs and manila folders. We talked about love and boundaries, and the way joy can be an ache when it's borrowed. We shared templates for calm texts. We practiced saying, no, but I can do this instead. We laughed more than I expected. We hugged goodbye like people who'd learned to put their arms around themselves first. Bree heard about it. She said, "You're recruiting people against me," over the phone, accusation wrapped in fear. "I'm building scaffolding," I said. "They're building theirs. None of it is about you. All of it is about the kids." Silence, then a sigh. Fine. On a Wednesday in early November, she called me from a parking lot, voice flat. "I messed up," she said. "The credit union closed my application. The registered address thing triggered it. And the insurance? They raised my rate because they think I lied on the garaging address. I didn't mean, I just thought..." She ran out of words. "I'm sorry," I said. 2 true words that don't mean I'll fix it. "What do I do?" she asked. "You make a plan," I said. "Bring me your bills. We'll set up payment orders for the court. We'll look at what you can cut. We'll ask my friend at the nonprofit to help you negotiate with the credit union for a lower interest on the existing balance. And we'll keep school separate from everything." I paused. "And you will stop making my name a tool." She sniffed. "Okay." The bills came in a grocery bag, crumpled, resentful. We spread them on my dining table like a tarot reading and looked for the future in the numbers. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't hopeless. I showed her the snowball method. I showed her the avalanche. She picked snowball because small wins felt like oxygen. Sell the SUV. Oh, wait. And then I remembered the sedan in the courthouse parking lot and didn't finish the sentence. She grimaced. "I'm upside down on a lesson," she said. "Then we climb out, and we don't buy another shovel." We made a budget that had no room for spirit boxes or impulse shoes, but did have room for Caleb's new cleats when his toes made a determined bid for freedom. We set autopay for the court-ordered reimbursement. We scheduled the last budgeting class. "Finish what you started," I told her. "It's a muscle." She looked at me with something I hadn't seen in a long time. It wasn't gratitude. It was something older. Recognition, maybe? "You always know what to do," she said softly.
I don't, I said. I know how to start. The next weekend at Family Science Night, Sir Beeps-a-Lot navigated the maze like a drunk but earnest uncle at a wedding, knocking into walls and then correcting with a dignity you had to admire. We cheered anyway. Caleb looked at me and I gave him the look all grandmothers practice in the mirror, the one that says, "I see you. You are my favorite thing that ever happened to me besides indoor plumbing." As we were leaving, Bree hung back. "I'm sorry," she said, so quiet I almost missed it.
For what? I asked, because specificity matters. For using him against you, for using you, for the fake invoice, for the business registration, for acting like your love was a slot machine I could win if I just pulled the lever hard enough. Her mouth twisted. I hate that I did that. I took a breath and let the air fill the part of me that wanted to be petty. Then I let that part sit down. Thank you for saying that, I said. We'll do better. Together. She nodded, eyes glassy. I'm trying. I know, I said. Try longer. We walked to our cars under a sky that looked like it had borrowed paint from a kindergarten water cup. Bree opened the sedan door and paused. Mom? She said. Do you ever feel like you're the villain in your own story? All the time, I said. That's how you know it's the truth. Heroes don't learn much. Villains have some thinking to do. She laughed, surprised. You're such a nerd. I prefer sage, I said, but I'll answer to either. At home, I put the binder back on the shelf. It was fat with the year. Texts, receipts, printouts, that one fake invoice that made me roll my eyes so hard I saw it last Tuesday. I thought about burning it. Ceremonial. Cleansing. Then I decided to keep it. Not as a threat. As a reminder that the next time a Tuesday tastes like old coffee, I know how to brew something better. There is one more piece, the one I haven't told you yet. The part where the scales balance in a way even I didn't anticipate, where the truth pulls up a chair and pours itself some tea. It involves a PTO election, a policy change at the academy, and a letter that lands like a seed and sprouts into something that changes more than just our small family. Don't go anywhere. I didn't sleep much after Family Science Night. Too many gears still turning in my head. I've learned that before a life changes, there's a little hum in the air, like a refrigerator you only notice when it stops. 3 things were coming for us. A PTO election with my name on it whether I liked it or not, a school policy about money that would stop drama at the door, and a letter that would land like a seed and grow into something I couldn't have engineered if I'd tried. PTO elections are the county fair of adult politics. Homemade signs, sticky fingers, and someone arguing about rules no one has read since 1998. I was not planning to run for anything except the exit. But then the current treasurer announced she was moving. The principal whispered, "We need someone reliable." And 3 moms swung their heads toward me like sunflowers, following the light. Linda, one said, ponytail, leggings, and a toddler balanced on her hip like an accessory you can't buy. You worked with tuition for 30 years. We need clean books. I came here for bookmarks and glue, I told her, and the tiny chairs. She said, run, please. I could have said no. I've said no before and meant it. But the truth was, I'd been keeping ledgers my whole life, of money, of hurts, of favors, of grace. And I was tired of whispering in corners. If we were going to build a better way for families to help kids without the money getting sticky, I needed a seat at the table with the big stapler. So I ran, quietly. No posters. I made one simple flyer that said, direct dollars, clean books, no shame. And in smaller print, we'll pay schools, not stories. We'll keep receipts. We'll help without making anyone beg. My opponent was a woman named Tiffany, who wore a blazer like it owed her rent and had an Instagram account full of charcuterie boards and slogans about abundance.
She was nice enough at drop-off and terrifying with a spreadsheet. Bree liked her. Of course she did. She knows people, she said, and she's not rigid. I'm not rigid, I said. I'm precise. Those are cousins, she tossed back, but she smiled. Then she added, just don't make this a referendum on my choices, okay? And there it was, the old fear that I was going to use a microphone to spank her in public. I didn't want that. I wanted rules that made everyone safer, including her, whether she realized it or not. Election night was a potluck with ballots. Somebody brought meatballs in a crock pot that could run a small city. I made deviled eggs because I am of a generation that understands both cholesterol and comfort. We sat in the cafeteria under a banner that said, "Readers are leaders," and if irony was a person, it would have sat down and borrowed a pen.
We candidates got 2 minutes at the mic. Tiffany talked about fundraising goals and activating parent energy. I talked about drop-off being the only place some parents get adult conversation, and that if we were going to ask for money, we needed to make giving feel like relief, not a quiz. My platform is simple: sunlight and systems. We'll launch a classroom wishlist clearinghouse so parents, grandparents, and neighbors can fund items directly: pencils, triptys, speech therapy tools, without cash changing hands at the curb. We'll set up a direct pay portal for bigger things, science camp, instruments, so third parties can pay the school, not the parent. And we'll keep reporting so clean you could eat off it. No more mystery boxes. I looked at no one in particular and everyone at once. A dad in a construction hoodie shouted, "Make the lunch line fast again!" And everyone laughed, which helped. Then came the questions, my favorite and least favorite part of any job. How will you protect families' privacy? How do we help without shaming? What about families who don't have grandparents with deep pockets? Transparency for the money, discretion for the people, I said. We'll tag requests with student ID numbers schools already use instead of names. If a kid's need can't be met by a known adult, we'll have a community fund we can draw from quietly. No lists posted on refrigerator doors like scarlet letters. And oversight? Asked the current treasurer. You'll have to be comfortable with an audit. Ma'am, I said, smiling, I am an audit that learned to bake. I won. Not a landslide, but a clear, decent margin. After the votes were counted, people clapped the way Midwesterners clap when relieved, twice as long as necessary, just in case you thought we didn't mean it. Tiffany shook my hand. Her smile was tight, but she meant it too. Do a good job. We're counting on you. That's as close as our kind gets to surrender. Bree squeezed my elbow. Congrats, she said, stiff and proud and afraid all at once. I said, help me. Help in any way you can. Hand out forms at movie night. Put out chairs. None of this works if it's just me. She nodded. I can do that. The next morning, I took a day off from Victory to do the boring, holy work of infrastructure. I sat with the principal and the district's finance officer, a man named Phil who wore ties with small, cheerful whales, and the school secretary who actually knew how everything worked. I laid out my plan. The Sunlight Ledger, monthly reports, color-coded, posted in the office and emailed out, and the Classroom Clearinghouse. Teachers submit itemized requests, donors pick a number and pay the district directly. Teachers pick up supplies without tracking which grandparent bought the glue. Phil leaned back and said, "You want to avoid commingling." I said, "I want to avoid drama. Commingling is just drama that got an MBA." We hammered for an hour. We set thresholds, we set rules, and we wrote a one-page policy that said, no gift cards to individuals, no Venmo to teachers, no cash in backpacks. It was annoying, and it was brilliant. We called it the Third-Party Educational Support Protocol. A mouthful on purpose, because mouthfuls make people slow down and think. We needed district approval.
That meant a school board meeting, which meant public comment, which meant someone would be mad and someone would be dramatic and someone would bring 3 friends and a homemade sign. I wore navy again, the color of I did my homework. When it was my turn, I walked up and set a mason jar full of pencils on the lectern. I said, "Here, this is $6.99 at the office store. It's also a classroom argument avoided, a kid spared embarrassment, a teacher who doesn't spend her own money to fill the gap. I'm asking you to say yes to a system where those $6.99 moments go straight from neighbor to classroom without stopping in a purse full of dignity." I told them about the portal, the ID numbers, the reporting. I did not tell them about the SUV. That part of my story was irrelevant to the vote and too tempting to turn into theater. I wanted policy, not applause. A board member asked about misuse. "What if someone tries to funnel money through the portal to themselves?" he said. And all the hairs on my arms remembered the fake invoice Bree had tried. I said, "That's why it's school-facing only. We'll audit quarterly, we'll publish totals, we'll require 2 signatures on transfers. Don't make heroes out of volunteers by asking them to be banks. Make them neighbors."
The vote was unanimous. The principal squeezed my shoulder on the way back to my seat, which almost made me cry. Public approval is dumber than a puppy sometimes, but when you're trying to change a culture, it helps to have the room say, "Proceed." I came home and danced in my kitchen to Aretha while the cat judged me. Then I sat down and wrote a tiny, clean email to the district, copying Phil and the principal. "Thank you for adopting the third-party educational support protocol. I'll set up an orientation for teachers and a simple guide for families. I'll also create a standard wish list form so requests are uniform. Amounts, vendor, purpose. We'll start small, pilot for a quarter, then adjust." Phil wrote back, "You're a machine, a warm, terrifying machine." "I'm a grandmother," I replied. "We invented warm and terrifying." 2 days later, the letter arrived. Not in the mail, emailed from Mrs. T with the subject line, "For grand friends' eyes first." It was a scanned page with pencil rubbings in the corner and eraser shavings smudged like confetti. The assignment was, write a letter to someone who shows up for you. Caleb's was addressed to me. "Dear Nana, I like when you come to my school because I feel like a building with a light on. You make me feel like I'm not a problem you have to fix. You are a person who keeps promises. I love you more than Sir Beeps a Lot noise level 10. Love, Caleb." I sat there with my hand over my mouth, and the part of me that has been told to be tough my whole life took a nap. I sent the letter to the printer like it was a prescription and taped it inside the pantry next to the cocoa. Then I printed another copy and slipped it into the binder. Evidence, Your Honor, that small boys understand big things better than we do. I didn't send it to Bree, not then. I waited. That was not a letter you weaponize. That was a letter you unwrap when the room is quiet and the person across from you is ready to hear it as a blessing instead of a rebuke. And just when he thought he had me backed into a corner, he forgot who he was dealing with. Stick with me because you'll want to see how this plays out. With the portal coming, other things began to shake loose. The spirit box that had tempted Bree and a dozen other parents, monthly payments to a vague fund, was sunsetted. We replaced it with classroom wish lists and a monthly email titled, "This Month's Little Fixes." It was shockingly boring, which is how you know it was good. Room 12 needs 2 sets of noise-canceling headphones, $49 each. Room 3 needs a set of decodable readers, $120. The nurse needs extra socks. Yes, socks. People funded them. The nurse sent a thank you for the socks that made me laugh until I had to sit down. She wrote, "You cannot imagine how many small lives are improved by dry cotton." Bree called me that night. "Socks?" she said. "Really?"
I said, "Really? It's never the glamorous things that change the day." She went quiet. "I signed up to help at movie night," she said. "Chairs, concessions, put me where you need me." I said, "Concessions. You're charming when you want to be." She snorted, "So are you." The first month of the portal, we raised enough in direct pay to cover every field trip, every extra lab fee, and a small surplus for the school counselor's Oh Honey Fund, which is her name for the money you need when a kid's backpack disintegrates or a button pops, and the day is saved by a $3 sewing kit and 2 minutes. We posted a 1-page report with numbers, not names. Parents who had been wary sent little heart emojis to the PTO email. A grandfather in a VFW hat sent a handwritten note with $10 and a picture of him in 1969, smiling like he couldn't believe his own grin. He wrote, "For the kids who need a little extra." It wasn't perfect. Someone grumbled that the portal was exclusionary because not everyone could give. I wrote back from the PTO account, "That's exactly why it exists. So those who can, do. Those who can't, stand in line for popcorn at movie night and know their kid's field trip is paid by a neighbor, not a lie." The grumbler apologized. "We made popcorn. We ran out of butter and used olive oil, and nobody died." There were bumps. 2 weeks in, a teacher put classroom rug on the list, and a parent wrote, "Isn't that the district's responsibility?" They were right. We updated the form to require that teachers indicate whether a request was a district obligation, an enhancement, or a replacement for damaged property. I learned to love the phrase scope of budget in a whole new way.
And yes, one afternoon, a vendor tried to submit a quote that led back to a doc in the cloud with an editable price field and a routing number that smelled like fish. We flagged it, forwarded it to Phil, and added verified vendors only to the rulebook. Bree texted, "You have a scam magnet." I wrote back, "Better on my fridge than going straight into someone's gas tank." She sent back a single, sincere, fair. I know this part is hard to hear, but it's important. The truth was about to come out, and it was going to be glorious. 2 Sundays after the portal launched, the church down the street did something unexpected. The pastor, who looks like he lost a fight with a box of highlighters and won, announced during coffee hour that they were tithing 5% of their monthly outreach to our school's clearinghouse. No prayers attached, he said, just pencils. The synagogue across town sent a matching check on Tuesday with a sticky note that read, "We too are pro-pencil." I put both notes in the binder and the amounts in the ledger and sat very still at my kitchen table until the cat patrolled by and decided I was not dying, just processing. That's when the letter I'd been saving met the person who needed it most. It was a quiet night. Bree had just dropped Caleb off after dinner, on time, as per the mediator's paper, which we now treated like a sacred text. She lingered in the doorway as if the hall light could solve a problem. I had a hard day," she said. "Tea?" I asked. She nodded. We sat. And without dramatics, without the preamble that used to feel like a throat clearing for a fight, I slid the letter across the table. He wrote this. His teacher sent it to me. I wanted you to read it. She bent her head and read. I watched the part of her face that gets hard soften sense, jaw to eyes to mouth. She pressed her fingers against her lips the way women do when they don't know whether they're going to laugh or cry and end up doing both in the worst possible order. When she finished, she set the paper down very carefully, like it might run away if jostled. He does not feel like that when I use weekends as a stick, she said, not asking and not accusing, just mapping a truth like she'd found the edge of a continent. No, I said. He doesn't. She nodded, eyes bright. I'm sorry, she said again. And this time, it landed in a place inside me where apologies turned to action instead of trophies. Me too, I said.
For the places I didn't teach you what I thought I had? For letting money become a language between us that we both speak poorly?" She laughed, weak and real. "You speak it fine," she said. "I can diagram a sentence. That's not the same as writing a poem." We made a pact then. Not legally binding, not hammered by a mediator, but stitched with peppermint tea and tired women choosing to stand on the same floorboard. We agreed to stop using Caleb as leverage. We agreed that all help would go through the portal or the 529, no exceptions. We agreed to set a budget meeting for her, once a month, not to do it for her, but to sit beside her while she did it. And we agreed to speak in clean emails when we were mad, and in person when we were tired, and to use the phone only for pizza. The next morning, the principal emailed us, "Because of the success of the clearinghouse, the district is adopting the protocol county-wide. We'll credit your school as the pilot." She attached a PDF of the policy and a note from Phil. I told them you were scarier than an audit in a good way. The email CC list included administrators from schools I'd never stepped foot in. This was the seed sprouting in the cracks. This was the part where the system changed so the people didn't have to keep breaking themselves to fix what should have never been broken. Meanwhile, the small claims repayment wasn't just a judgment, it was a rhythm. On the 15th of each month, a check arrived from the clerk printed with a stub that looked exactly the same except for the number marching backward. Bree complained about it exactly once. "It's so embarrassing to pay a court." And I said, "Then be grateful it's not a prison." She shut her mouth and kept paying. I deposited every check into my mother's scholarship fund for the summer academy. If a story can be composted, that's what I was doing. Turning something that stank into something that fed roots. Then came the PTO hiccup that could have undone it all if I hadn't learned to breathe and keep my wrists soft. An anonymous email went to the PTA list. Why is the new treasurer pushing a system that gives her access to more money? Isn't that a conflict of interest? The moderator forwarded it to me and to Tiffany and to the principal. For one hot minute, I was 25 again and wanted to drive to someone's house and have a conversation on the porch with words that would singe paint. Then I remembered I was 64 and I have better tools.
Every disbursement requires 2 signatures. All donors pay the district directly. The treasurer never touches funds. Monthly reports are public. Annual audit is scheduled. If you have a specific concern, please bring it to the audit committee. Transparency is the job. Suspicion without facts is a hobby. Tiffany, God bless her blazer, replied to all. As Linda's former opponent, I have reviewed the books. They're clean. It was the perfect witness, a gracefully conceited rival vouching for me. The anonymous email went quiet, the portal chugged on, we ordered more glue sticks. Around this time, Bree's sedan settled into her life the way practical things do. It had decent mileage and no drama. She started showing up to movie night and stayed to sweep. She didn't make speeches. She didn't need to. Bree is alive in rooms where money isn't the point. It took her 34 years to find that out, and I wasn't going to ruin the discovery by announcing it like a parade. We had one backslide. She texted late on a Thursday. "Can we skip your weekend? I have a thing." I stared at the text, counted to 5, and replied, "Per agreement, need 48 hours notice unless emergency. I can pick up or we can trade next weekend. Your call." She wrote back, "Trade next weekend?" I said yes, and we traded. I wrote it down. The binder is boring and relentless. That's why it works. He was about to get exactly what he deserved, and I had a front row seat. Don't go anywhere. Who's he? Not a person, exactly. A system. The way we do school money in this country is 1,000 tiny leaks in a boat we pretend is fine because it still floats. The district's adoption of our protocol meant those little leaks got patched with forms and signatures and a central office that said gently but firmly, "No Venmo." That's not sexy. That's sustainable. And sustainable is the revenge of the exhausted. But the story had one more turn to take, one I didn't see coming because I had carefully turned my eyes away from it for a decade. The letter arrived on a Wednesday, a real one this time, with a windowed envelope and the kind of font that says, "We are the government and this is not junk mail." It came from the state's Child Support Enforcement Agency. My heart did a small, accurate tap dance. Dear Ms. Carter, we are writing to inform you that child support case number has been reopened at the request of the custodial parent. Based on current employment records, non-custodial parent Mr. has active wages that are now subject to withholding. Payments will be remitted to the state disbursement unit and made available to the custodial parent via direct deposit. Estimated first payment date. I sat very still. Then I read it again. Then a third time. The name on the paper, the one I tried to forget because it once walked away. And I thought about absence as a kind of theft no court can fully repair. I also thought about relief, having a different face than you expected. I did not call Bree. I taped the letter under the cocoa next to Caleb's. I waited for Bree to speak first, because sometimes grace is letting someone choose not to be grateful in front of the person who scares them. She called that evening, breathless. "Did you get the letter?" I did. I didn't know if they would find him. I didn't know if I should tell you I filed again. I didn't want you to think that you needed money, I offered. You do. Her laugh was a cough. I do. I'm glad you filed, I said. I'm sorry you had to. I almost didn't, she admitted. I get weird about pride. I know, it's expensive. We didn't dance on the grave of an old decision. We didn't gloat. We did practical things. We logged into the portal and added the repayment to the scholarship direct deposit info to her budget spreadsheet. We moved the repayment to the scholarship to the auto withdraw so she wouldn't be tempted to forget it. And we earmarked the first support payment for two things: Caleb's new sneakers and paying down the highest interest debt. And we wrote down quietly that this was justice, not charity. Then the district superintendent asked me to lead a panel for other schools about the clearinghouse. She said, "You're good at being kind without putting a bow on it. We need more of that." The panel was 3 principals, 1 nurse, and me. We talked about protocols and vendors and how to say no without making people feel small. Midway through, a young mom raised her hand and said, "What do you do when your own family uses your kid to shake you down?" I swallowed and answered with my whole history in a paragraph. You stop paying the person and start paying the system. You keep receipts. You get a mediator. You let a court take the blame for the parts that need blame. You protect the child from your adult feelings. And you remember that love is not a ledger, but it loves a clean ledger. Afterward, she hugged me and cry-laughed in that way I recognize, because I've done it in my car more times than I will write down here. "I thought I was alone," she said. "You're never alone," I said. "We just don't talk about the mess until we figure out how to make it helpful." A month later, the academy director, the summer one, sent me an email with the subject line that said, "Your mother's name is about to become an acronym." I almost closed my laptop and walked into the sea. Instead, I opened it. The donor, the engineer who doesn't trust robots but trusts kids who build them, had funded an endowment for our quiet scholarship and named it with my mom's initials and a phrase that made me tear up: "Keep showing up." The policy we wrote for Piano Simple Giving would now keep kids' summers bright long after I'm done making deviled eggs. I told no one except Jeannie. She left me a voicemail that said, "Sometimes the universe emails back, honey." I saved it. Bree made her first payment to the court on time again. She finished the 4th budgeting class. She applied for a part-time shift with benefits that matched her strengths: talking to people, organizing small chaos, being charming without stealing pens, and got it. She started a toy library through the PTO so families could borrow scooters and soccer balls and board games for weekends without turning their living rooms into the set of a plastic commercial. It cost us $300 and saved the breath of 100 parents who couldn't afford another noisier thing. One night we sat on my porch with lemonade and silence. Caleb tried to catch lightning bugs and nearly fell into my peonies. Bree watched him and then said, "Do you ever think about
forgiving the person you used to be? Every day, I said. She was doing the best she could with a map that had smudges where the road should be. And what about forgiving the person who hurt you and shares your face? She asked, not looking at me. I work on it. I'm further along on days when the dishwasher doesn't leak. She laughed. I love you, she said, not like an apology, not like a prayer, like a fact. I love you back. We are not done. Redemption isn't a runway. It's a cul-de-sac where you wave at your neighbors and plant native perennials. The SUV is gone, the scholarship has interest, the portal keeps clicking, the binder gets a new page every month and a quiet little check mark beside payment received. We eat spaghetti on Wednesdays and teach Caleb to load the dishwasher like a gentleman. He teaches us to make paper airplanes that fly better than our first drafts of adulthood ever did. There is one last piece I haven't told you yet. The PTO election led to the district protocol, which led to the county adoption, which led to a state-level task force that wants a grandma on the panel because you speak human. Tiffany nominated me, Tiffany of the blazer and charcuterie, because she said, I trust you to tell the truth and not make me feel like an idiot when you do. Bree read the email and said, you have to go, wear navy. I will. And when I sit at that table with people who think policy is a puzzle, I'll take a pencil from my mason jar and write socks in the corner of my notes so I don't forget why we're there. But before that, the thing that will make you cheer in your kitchen the way I did in mine, there's a moment coming where the past knocks on our door for the last time and we answer it with a clipboard and a smile and a no thank you. It involves an apology I never expected, a fundraiser with a twist, and a public reckoning that is not cruel but is unmistakable. The person who needed to hear it will be in the front row. So will you if you want. Don't go anywhere. The state task force invitation came on a Tuesday that smelled like rain and printer ink. We're convening a panel on ethical school fundraising and third-party support. We need someone who speaks human. Tiffany had nominated me. I stared at my screen and thought about how the universe loves irony. The woman who once wired tuition into a lie, now in a navy cardigan, explaining how to keep money from getting sticky. I printed the agenda, scribbled socks in the corner, my North Star, and stuck a pencil behind my ear like a talisman. 2 days later, the past knocked, not figuratively. It knocked on my literal front door at 6:18 p.m. when I was testing a batch of brownies for movie night. Bree was at my table helping fold PTO flyers, her elbows making small paper mountains, when the knock came again, louder. I opened it with my chin still dusted in cocoa and saw a man I recognized like a road I hoped I'd never have to drive again. Caleb's father, Evan, 10 years older, beard like a bramble, regret pressed into his posture. He had a baseball cap twisted in his hands and a smile you put on for the DMV, functional, unconvincing. Hi, he said, voice smaller than I remembered. Bree, Miss Carter. My mouth said nothing. My spine did calculus. Bree's face went white in a way that made me glad she was already sitting.
How did you... she began, then stopped. No, why? He swallowed. The state reached out, wages, garnishment. He glanced at me, then at the flyers on the table like he wanted a prop to hold that wasn't his own pride. I wanted to talk, work something out, off the books. 3 words that turned my blood to ice. Off the books. No, I said, calm as a turned-down bed. The books exist for a reason. He tried to smile again. It cracked. Come on, Ms. Carter, you were always reasonable. I'm precise, I corrected, because that's the skin I live in now. You can be part of your son's life, but money moves through the system or it doesn't move at all. Bree found her voice. It came out low and steady, a voice I hadn't heard from her when she was 24 and terrified. You don't get to use we like there was ever a we doing the work, she said. You left. The state found you. You can apologize. You can be consistent. You can start. He nodded too fast. I want to see him, he blurted. He lifted a plastic bag like a peace flag.
I could see a pair of light-up sneakers through the cloudy plastic, size wrong by a mile. Stop, I said, softer. We don't buy our way in with shoes. We show up with time, and we keep showing up. We'll talk to the school family coordinator. You'll have to do their process. They do background checks and a slow ramp. Supervised visits at first. No promises you can't keep. He sagged a little. I deserve that. You don't deserve him, Bree shot back. And then she covered her mouth like she'd let the beast out and wasn't sure whether to pet it or run. I mean, she deflated. You don't get him because you feel bad today. You get him because you show up next week and the week after. He nodded differently that time. More less agreement, more understanding. Okay, he said. Tell me where to start. I said the family coordinator. Her name is Miss Halpern. She likes people who bring their own pen. He blinked, surprised by the ordinary detail. I have a pen, he said. And for the first time, I believe there might be a person under the posture. Bree stood, the wariness in her shoulders like a cat deciding whether a hand is for petting or grabbing. She said, You can write down your number, and you can leave the bag. The shoes won't fit, but the thought can wait until you know his size. He wrote. He left. I shut the door and pressed my palms to the cool wood. Then I turned to Bree. You okay? I asked. No, she said honestly, but I'm not drowning. We ate brownies for dinner because sometimes justice comes in chocolate. He called Miss Halpern, he did the background check, he canceled one appointment, work emergency, and made the next two. He learned to be on time with a school clock watching. He learned not to make promises like confetti, and he learned something I didn't expect him to learn. To say, I'm sorry, without a coupon attached. The first supervised visit was at the school playground. Bree and I hung back with a staff member between us, a human Switzerland named Mr. Alonzo, who can stop a fight with a raised eyebrow. Caleb stood with his hands in his pockets like a small man at a bus stop. Evan approached like he'd forgotten which muscle moves legs. Hey, buddy, he said. I'm sorry I didn't show up before. Caleb studied him like a math problem with too many words. Then he said, We're not buddies yet. You can try to be my dad, though. I looked away and bit my lip and changed religions 4 times in my head. Evan nodded. I'll try to be your dad. I'll come next week and the next week. And then he did, 3 in a row. We weren't absolving anyone. We were acknowledging a pattern. Sometimes that's how forgiveness sneaks in, disguised as scheduling.
How did you... she began, then stopped. No. Why? He swallowed. The state, reached out. Wages. Garnishment. He glanced at me, then at the flyers on the table, like he wanted a prop to hold that wasn't his own pride. I wanted to... talk. Work something out. Off the books. 3 words that turn my blood to ice. Off the books. No, I said, calm as a turned-down bed. The books exist for a reason. He tried a smile again. It cracked. Come on, Miss Carter. You were always reasonable. I'm precise, I corrected, because that's the skin I live in now. You can be part of your son's life, but money moves through the system, or it doesn't move at all. Bree found her voice. It came out low and steady. A voice I hadn't heard from her when she was 24 and terrified. You don't get to use we like there was ever a we doing the work, she said. You left. The state found you. You can apologize. You can be consistent. You can start. He nodded too fast. I want to see him. I brought... He lifted a plastic bag like a peace flag. I could see a pair of light-up sneakers through the cloudy plastic, size wrong by a mile. Stop, I said, softer. We don't buy our way in with shoes. We show up with time, and we keep showing up. We'll talk to the school family coordinator. You'll have to do their process. They do background checks and a slow ramp, supervised visits at first. No promises you can't keep." He sagged a little. "I deserve that." "You don't deserve him," Bree shot back. Then she covered her mouth, like she'd let the beast out and wasn't sure whether to pet it or run. "I mean," she deflated, "you don't get him because you feel bad today. You get him because you show up next week, and the week after." He nodded differently that time. Less agreement, more understanding. "Okay," he said. "Tell me where to start." "The family coordinator," I said, taking a sticky note and writing the name and number. "Her name is Miss Halpern. She likes people who bring their own pen." He blinked, surprised by the ordinary detail. "I have a pen," he said. And for the first time, I believed there might be a person under the posture. Bree stood, the wariness in her shoulders, like a cat deciding whether a hand is for petting or grabbing. "You can write down your number, and you can leave the bag. The shoes won't fit, but the thought can wait until you know his size." He wrote. He left. I shut the door and pressed my palms to the cool wood. Then I turned to Bree. "Are you okay?" I asked. "No," she said honestly, "but I'm not drowning." We ate brownies for dinner because sometimes justice comes in chocolate. He called Miss Halpern. He did the background check. He canceled one appointment, work emergency, and made the next two. He learned to be on time with a school clock watching. He learned not to make promises like confetti. And he learned something I didn't expect him to learn, to say, "I'm sorry," without a coupon attached. The first supervised visit was at the school playground. Bree and I hung back with a staff member between us, a human Switzerland named Mr. Alonzo, who can stop a fight with a raised eyebrow. Caleb stood with his hands in his pockets, like a small man at a bus stop. Evan approached like he'd forgotten which muscle moves legs. "Hey, buddy," he said. "I'm sorry I didn't show up before." Caleb studied him like a math problem with too many words. Then he said, "We're not buddies yet. You can try to be my dad, though." I looked away and bit my lip and changed religions 4 times in my head. Evan nodded. "I'll try to be your dad. I'll come next week and the next week." And then he did. 3 in a row. We weren't absolving anyone. We were acknowledging a pattern. Sometimes that's how justice sneaks in, disguised as scheduling. I know this part is hard to hear, but it's important. The truth was about to come out, and it was going to be glorious. The task force panel was set for the following Thursday. I wore navy. Bree approved via text. "Navy equals authority without scaring them," I wrote back. She sent an eye roll emoji and a heart. I tucked a pencil into my pocket and a copy of Caleb's letter into my binder. Not to read, but to hold. The panel impressed me. Real principals, a cafeteria manager who could run FEMA, a district attorney with eyebrows that meant business, and one father who'd raised 3 kids on a janitor's salary and knew exactly how far a quarter could stretch if you kept it out of the wrong hands. I told our story without names, as a map instead of a memoir. The 529, the mediator, the portal, the audited sunlight. I said, "Pay schools, not stories," and watched the room sit up.
A superintendent from a neighboring county raised a hand. "What about families who need cash for gas to get to the field trip?" "We ask what time the bus leaves," I said. "We ask if the school can provide transportation. We look for rides. We don't funnel money into gas tanks through people. We find the bus key." After, in the hallway, a woman in a blouse that meant business came up with a handshake that meant alliance. "We're taking your protocol," she said. "We're going to call it the Carter method." "Please don't," I said. "Call it no Venmo." She laughed. Done. The fundraiser was 2 nights later. STEM and socks. I didn't come up with the name, but if I had, I would have worn a crown. The whole thing was a twist on every school gala I've endured. No auction for spa baskets nobody wanted, no bidding wars for principal for a day. We did a boring things live, where donors held up signs to fund mundane glory. 4 cases of glue sticks, lab goggles, bus rental for the 4th grade museum trip. People raised paddles for $11, for $23, for $71. It was the most democratic, least glamorous, most effective thing I've ever seen. The twist? When donors raised a paddle, a kid pulled a string and a sock fell from a clothesline across the stage with the funded item printed on a card. The kids cheered for socks like they were gold medals. The nurse cried in the good way. Bree worked at concessions like she was embarrassed to be good at it and a little high on the feeling. She joked with dads in team hoodies and moms in dresses with pockets. She didn't run around waving, "See me," she just helped. Tiffany ran the clipboard. I watched those two talk and thought, evolution is messy, but it is real. Halfway through, the MC, a math teacher with a stand-up comedian's timing, said, "We're going to pause and tell you why this works." And I felt my stomach drop. I had asked not to be made into a speech. He didn't call my name. He told a story in the third person. There was a grandmother, he said, who kept paying a story because it was wrapped around her grandson like a bow. She found out and she didn't scorch the earth. She built a system, and now 42 kids are going on a field trip they would have missed. People clapped the way decent people clap when presented with decency they didn't have to perform. Then he said, and the person who first heard "pay schools, not stories" in the tone of correction is in the front row tonight. She's a volunteer to concessions, and she's the reason this is a family story and not a crime show. He pointed with his whole arm. Heads turned. Bree looked up, startled. She went pink, then pale, then tall. She raised her little paper cup of lemonade and nodded. Not a wave, not a confession. An acknowledgement of gravity. The room gave her a soft cheer. I exhaled a breath I'd been holding for 2 years. And just when he thought he had me backed into a corner, he forgot who he was dealing with. Stick with me, because you'll want to see how this plays out. The public reckoning wasn't booing or shaming. It was math. The MC clicked to a slide with 4 numbers. Direct to school, $12,804. Field trips covered, 6. Socks acquired, 197 pairs. Gift cards to individuals, 0. The last number got the loudest cheer. Not because gift cards are evil, sometimes they're a lifeline, but because our lifeline was finally braided strong enough to hold. After, in the hallway, a woman in a blouse that meant business came up with a handshake that meant alliance. "We're taking your protocol," she said. "We're going to call it the Carter method." "Please don't," I said. "Call it no Venmo." She laughed. Done. We were cleaning up when Evan appeared at the edge of the gym, awkward as a tall plant in the wrong pot. He wasn't lurking. He was practicing not hiding. Miss Halpern was with him, clipboard tucked like a shield under her arm. That woman could manage a summit at the United Nations with a whistle and a stack of hall passes. "Hi," he said to Bree. Miss Halpern asked if I could say something where there are witnesses. His eyes flicked to me, to Tiffany, to the janitor pushing a mop. "I'm sorry I left. I'm sorry I let money talk for me. I'm sorry about the years that aren't coming back. I'm going to keep showing up. If I miss, I'll say I missed. I won't make you chase me." Silence landed soft and heavy. Bree looked at him for a long beat, and then nodded once. The kind of nod you give the truth when it finally shows its face. "Okay," she said. "Start stacking chairs."
He smiled a real smile then and stacked chairs. He stacked like a men's look. Boring, useful, repeated. On Monday, the district sent a newsletter. The Third-Party Educational Support Protocol was now officially in the policy manual. They called it something long and bureaucratic, but in a corner of the PDF was a small box. Our thanks to the grandparents, parents, and staff who piloted this model. You showed us that sunlight is a tool, not a spotlight. I printed it to put in the binder. I printed it again and mailed it to myself. When big things happen, I like them to be delivered twice. Meanwhile, our small claims repayment clicked on like a metronome. The clerk's check came. I deposited it into the scholarship fund named for my mother. I told no one again, and I liked it that way. Vengeance wants an audience. Redemption prefers quiet. We hit our first real test of the new us 2 weeks later when Bree texted at 10 p.m. "He has a birthday party Saturday during your time. Can we switch?" The old Bree would have informed me, not asked. She would have thrown in a sad face and a sharp edge.
This Bree asked like a person holding a shared object with care. Yes, I wrote. Pick him up at 1, bring him back by 5. I'll take the next Saturday afternoon. She sent a thumbs up and, shock of shocks, a calendar invite. I accepted and felt like I had been given a medal made of Google. Evan kept showing up to supervised visits. He learned that 10 minutes late in the school's world is the same as a week, try again. He learned to bring snacks that didn't stain and jokes that didn't make 8-year-olds roll their eyes. He learned that Caleb liked facts about space and disliked adults who pretend to know what a perigee is. On the 4th visit, Miss Halpern said, "We'll add 10 minutes unsupervised at the end." And I wrote down 10 minutes like it was a birth weight. Not everything was tidy. An email popped up from the neighborhood group. Beware scammers pushing protocols to control your giving. I sipped my tea, wrote a short reply with the district link, and then turned my phone upside down and watched Jeopardy. I've learned that some fires smother themselves if you don't blow. The task force sent a follow-up asking me to draft a grand people guide. I did. 5 pages, short sentences, checklists, sample texts, 1 recipe for cocoa mix in a jar because if you're going to do hard things, you should add sugar. We posted it on the district site and printed copies for the office in a basket labeled, "Take 1, take 2 if your neighbor needs one." They disappeared like tissues in flu season. Good. That's what they were for. I also started noticing something at school pickup. Teachers who used to say, "Do you have 5 minutes?" with a look that really meant, "Please take a committee I hate off my hands," started saying, "I can focus on teaching now." Not a lot. Teaching is still a miracle performed in a broom closet, but a little. Enough. And enough is a lovely word to write in your notebook when you're over 60 and tired of drama. Then the superintendent called with a favor. "We're doing a statewide webinar on ethical fundraising. Would you close it out with a 5-minute story? Something human?" She paused. "We'll have Bree there if she's willing. We'd like parents to hear from a parent who almost drowned in the old way and found a doc." I asked Bree. She looked like I had offered her a stage and a trap. "Do they want me to confess?" she asked. "They want you to tell the truth," I said. "But only if you want to. You don't owe the internet your repentance." She thought about it overnight and texted in the morning, "I'll do it if you stand next to me. And if we don't use the word repentance, it sounds like a bad camp." We stood in front of a camera in the school library with the paper caterpillar of the reading challenge smiling behind us. I went first, short as requested. Systems that don't require heroism will be used by people who aren't heroes. That's the goal. Then Bree spoke, voice clear and unadorned. I did a desperate, stupid thing because I felt small and judged and tired. I blackmailed my mom with my son. It was wrong. The portal took away my best bad option. That made me mad. Then it made me grateful. Now it makes me proud. She took a breath and smiled without teeth. Also, socks. Never forget socks. The chat erupted in little hearts and thumbs and amens and oof. It was the public reckoning we needed. Not cruel, not soft, unmistakable. He was about to get exactly what he deserved, and I had a front row seat. Don't go anywhere. Who's he now? The part of the story that thought I would never require a receipt. The part that believed love equals a blank check. The he is the entitlement that lives in systems and sometimes in our kids. It was about to meet a boundary in front of a room full of people with clipboards.
The last twist started like all good local drama. A PTO election almost went sideways. Not ours, another school across town. Their treasurer had been privately collecting bus money through her personal account for months. She posted pictures of her living room stacked with goodies for the kids and then showed up at a fundraiser in a cardigan that cost more than a bus tire. People whispered. It got ugly in group texts. Someone sent me a heads up that their meeting was going to be a bonfire. I put on my navy sweater and went, not to referee, but to hand out buckets. The room buzzed like a hive. The treasurer looked like she'd swallowed a cactus. The principal looked like he wanted to thwack someone with a rolled-up newsletter. I raised my hand and asked for the mic like an old lady asking for extra napkins. "I'm from Lincoln," I said. "We had a mess. We built a thing." I explained the portal, the 2 signatures, the no cash in backpacks rule. I didn't say, "You've been doing it wrong." I said, "You can do it easier." We passed around copies of the policy. Tiffany, because women surprise you, stood up and said, "We'll help you set it up by Friday if you want." She had the clipboard, she had the authority, she had kindness caught between her teeth like a seed she finally decided to swallow. The treasurer cried into a napkin. "I'm sorry," she said to her room. "I was trying to be the hero. I don't even like the cape. I like the clipboard." People laughed and forgave her in the way that matters, with changes. On my way out, Miss Halpern texted, "Small landing tomorrow? 10 minutes extended to 20? I stared at the message, felt the exact weight of those extra minutes, and sent a heart and a yes. Bree called me later with her voice in a new register. Tired, hopeful, free. "I didn't think I'd ever be proud of a meeting," she said. "Is this what adulthood is? Being jazzed about forms?" "Pretty much," I said. "Plus good snacks." Movie night came again. I made brownies that didn't crumble in small hands. Evans stacked chairs without being asked. Bree ran concessions math in her head like a Vegas dealer who gave up gambling. Caleb watched his robot-themed cartoon next to a boy named Miguel. And the 2 of them whispered jokes that made no sense to anyone over 9. Mr. Alonzo patrolled like a kindly shark. The nurse distributed socks like Oprah. And I stood at the back, hands in cardigan pockets, and let myself feel it, the tidy, ordinary thrill of systems that work. At the end, as the credits rolled on the screen and kids scrambled for one last popcorn kernel, the principal tapped the mic. "We have one more announcement," she said. "Our county was awarded a grant to replicate the clearinghouse. The state is calling the model LINK, Local Identified Needs-Centered Support. I'd like to ask Linda to come up and say 3 words only." I walked up, swallowed a laugh at the absurdity, and said into the mic, "Pay schools, not stories." The room cheered. Bree whooped. Tiffany did a little, "Yeah!" that sounded like a cork popping. Evan clapped like a man who had figured out where to stand. Later, when the gym was almost empty, a man with a badge that said State Education Policy ambled over, hands in pockets. He said, "That was a neat trick, turning vengeance into infrastructure." I said, "I prefer boundaries into budgets." He grinned. "You got a minute? We're forming a little working group, unpaid, eternal snacks." "I'll bring the brownies." At home, I slid the newest clippings and printouts into the binder. It didn't feel like a dossier on my daughter anymore. It felt like a recipe box. Ingredients for a life that fed the right people. I poured tea. I turned off the kitchen light. My phone buzzed on the counter with a text from Bree, a picture of Caleb asleep under the quilt, one hand flung open, palm up like he'd been caught giving something away. "He asked me to read the spider book again," she wrote. "I did the voices. I wasn't great. He said I was perfect." "You are," I texted back, and then put the phone face down and let the quiet say the rest. There's one last chapter I haven't handed you yet, the one with the apology in a room with a microphone, the fundraiser twist that lands like a punchline and a promise. And a moment where a man learns that money can't buy you any seat in this house unless it's a folding chair and you're stacking it. It will end with a choice I make that surprises everyone, including myself. Don't go anywhere. The last chapter started the way most big changes in my life do, with tape, brownies, and a list. We were setting up for the district's STEM and Socks County Edition night in the high school gym, and I had volunteers everywhere like ants at a picnic.
Tiffany with her clipboard, Evan stacking chairs in tidy 6-high towers, Bree running concession math in her head like a Vegas dealer who gave up gambling. The state working group had borrowed our whole kit: portal, wish lists, no cash in backpacks rule, and the 2-signature rule, and asked us to demonstrate it live for half the county and a camera pointed to the state feed.
The agenda had one slot I didn't understand. Between noise-canceling headphones, funded, and bus rental halfway there was a neat little line: community pledge. No names, no details, just that. I flagged it in my program, circled it, and then forgot it while making sure the mic didn't squeal and the sock clothesline didn't droop like a sad laundry day. At 5:42 p.m., while I was taping a sign that said "Socks O'Clock" to a plastic bin, Evan sidled up with a cashier's check. The number in the corner was big enough to make the cat raise an eyebrow if cats had eyebrows. "It's my tax refund," he said, not bluffing, not smirking. "I want to make a dent." I looked at the check and then at him. 10 years ago, I'd have cried and taken it. 2 years ago, I'd have thrown it back at his chest like a frisbee. Today, I did what the new us does. I pointed. "Portal," I said. "If you want to give money, you give it to the system. If you want to buy a seat, you can't. If you want a job, we've got a cart that needs a name and a man to push it." He blinked. "A cart?" I said, nodding toward his tidy 6-high towers. "We're auctioning naming rights to things that matter and can't be framed. The chair cart will get used every event. Someone will say your name every time they put work away. But you don't buy it with cash. You earn it with hours. 200 volunteer hours, and the cart is yours to name for a year." His face did something I wish I could bottle and sell as medicine. Relief disguised as responsibility. "How many hours do I have?" I checked the little punch card Miss Halpern had been keeping on him like he was 12 again. 86, I said. "At your current pace, you'll get there before the winter concert." "I'll do it. I want to be said when work is done." "Good. Stack then." He stacked. He didn't pout. He didn't posture. He stacked like a man building the muscle he should have built years ago. We opened the doors at 6. People poured in: parents, grandparents, teachers who looked like they might cry from gratitude if anyone hugged them, kids who sprinted like joy has a speed limit. The sock clothesline was full of little cards: glue sticks, goggles, lab timers, an unglamorous list of what school really needs. Paddles went up. Socks fell. The nurse dabbed at her eyes with a sleeve and then told me sternly to drink water. Halfway through, the math teacher MC grinned into the mic. "Now for something new," he said. "The community pledge. You've watched us fund things you can touch. Now we're going to fund something you have to be." He read from a card. "We've created a pledge called the Folded Chair Oath. It's for any adult who wants to be in a child's life without paying for proximity. The oath says, I will show up. I will keep my word. I will be boring on purpose. And if I miss, I will say I missed. You take the oath, you get a lanyard and a slot on the chair schedule. You want to be seen stacking." Someone snorted. Then someone clapped. Then the clapping grew until the gym sounded like rain on a tin roof. Tonight, we're asking for 20 pledges. You pledge hours, not dollars. You pledge on paper. No Venmo for this one, folks. The crowd laughed. Papers went up like popcorn. The first to step forward was Mrs. Patel from across Breeze Hall, sorry swishing, eyes shining. "I like chairs," she said, taking a pen. The second was Mr. Alonzo, who already does everything and collects hall passes like merit badges. Then a dad in steel-toe boots. Then a teenager who said, "Do you count us?" The MC boomed, "We count anyone who keeps a promise." The room cheered again. And then Evan stepped up, put down his cashier's check on the edge of the stage where it looked suddenly small, and took a pen. "I pledge boring," he said, voice steady. Not looking at me or Bree,
looking at the paper like it was a contract with the person he'd finally decided to be. The MC, bless him, didn't milk it. He handed over the lanyard, stamped Evan's card, and said, "Chairman in training." The crowd laughed. Kind, not cruel. Evan went back to his towers, and God help me, I loved those chairs. I know this part is hard to hear, but it's important. The truth was about to come out, and it was going to be glorious. We were rolling. Socks fell. Goggles funded. The Oh Honey Fund got a boost. The nurse dabbed at her eyes with a sleeve and then told me sternly to drink water. Then the principal tapped the mic for the slide that had almost made me cry when I saw it in the deck. 4 numbers again, like last time, but bigger. Direct to school, $48,903. Field trips covered, 21. Socks acquired, 612 pairs. Gift cards to individuals, 0. The room cheered for the 0 like it had won an Oscar.
It had. 0 is what you get when your boundaries are doing their job. Then came the part that surprised even me. The MC looked down at his card and said, "We have one more item under the pledge." He glanced up at the back of the gym where a cluster of state folks stood with clipboards. "We received a letter," he said, "from someone who wanted to make their apology in the same room where their mistake would have lived." He swallowed, and I realized who it was before the name left his mouth. "Bree Carter," he said. "Will you come up?" My heart did not stop. It did a little 2-step and then sat down. Bree walked to the front, hands surprisingly steady, hair pulled back, like a woman who came to work, not to perform. Tiffany squeezed my fingers. I squeezed back. Bree took the mic, didn't let it squeal. "Hi," she said, voice clear. "2 years ago, I did a terrible thing. I used my son as a lever and my mother as an ATM. I lied about school because shame wears nice clothes and has a nice car. When the truth came, it came with a system that did not require me to be a hero or a liar. It just asked me to be accountable. I am. I will be. If you're a parent who is drowning in pride and panic, ask the school for a chair schedule. Don't ask your Nana for cash." A laugh rolled through the room, soft and grateful. She wasn't done. "I filed for child support. I take the budgeting class. I make payments to the clerk every month. I work concessions and I cut lemons until my hands smell like summer." She looked at me then, quick and bright. "And I'm sorry, Mom, for the lying, for the leverage, for the part where I almost taught Caleb that love is something you buy." She handed the mic back before the room could turn into a therapy circle and returned to concessions, where a man in a baseball cap bought 2 lemonades and said quietly, "That took guts." She nodded like she'd been complimented on a casserole and made change. And just when he thought he had me backed into a corner, he forgot who he was dealing with. "Stick with me, because you'll want to see how this plays out." The he got his last lesson an hour later. Loud, public, unmistakable, not cruel. The cashier's check Evan had laid on the stage edge had stayed there, a little monument to the old way. The MC picked it up at the end and held it toward the camera. "We appreciate generosity," he said, "but tonight this check is going to the portal, not a person. And this gentleman," he nodded toward Evan, "is taking home something money can't buy, a lanyard that says boring on purpose, and a chair schedule. If you want a seat here, it folds." The crowd burst into applause. Evan lifted the lanyard a little, sheepish and proud, and I watched a man try on a new name and find that it fit. The night wrapped the way good nights do, with a mess and a mop. Evan pushed the cart. Bree counted the drawer with Tiffany. The nurse sorted socks by size with the precision of a heart surgeon. The principal took a picture of the 4-number slide and sent it to the superintendent with the subject line, "Look what happens when we get out of the way." 2 days later, the state task force met again. I brought brownies and the folded chair oath laminated, because laminating is what happens when I get serious. We sat around a table with bad coffee and better intentions.
I told them exactly what you think I told them. If you want to keep the grift out, you have to pay institutions, not individuals. If you want apologies to stick, give people a broom and a time to show up, not a stage. If you want to stop drama, you have to be annoyingly specific. They nodded. One of them, the policy guy with his hands in his pockets, said, "You know, we can make the oath part of the volunteer onboarding statewide. We'll call it a best practice. The union will love that we're not asking for unpaid labor that replaces paid staff. We're asking for all the invisible stuff that gets left until midnight." "Exactly," I said. "Chairs, not teaching." I pushed a brownie plate toward him, and socks. They laughed and wrote socks in their notes. Good. Let them remember. By spring, Evan had clocked 200 hours. He did it like making amends. Quietly, repeatedly, without announcing it to the room. He named the chair cart Consistency. Not his name, not Caleb's. Consistency. Sharpie on a laminated card. I thought I would die of pride for a person I had once promised never to feel anything toward except the firm line of a boundary. Mrs. T invited me to the publishing party for the second graders' how-to books. Caleb's was How to Make a Robot Not Hit the Wall. The last page said, Step 5. Try again, but don't be mean to yourself. I nearly wept onto a paper cupcake. Bree stood beside me, hand sneaking into mine like she was 8 again and nervous about the violin recital. We listened to little voices read big thoughts, and we clapped for each other's children like a salary.
The small claims repayment hit its last stub in June. The clerk's check felt colder than the first, and kinder. I held it at my counter, looking up the number that had once kept me up and now barely tapped on the door of my sleep. I thought about revenge and how it had mutated in my hands into something that didn't need to sting to satisfy. Then I made the choice no one expected. Not even me. I took the check to the bank, deposited half into the scholarship fund like always, and I brought the other half home. I put it in an envelope with Bree's name on it and a note. You have paid what the court required. Here is the part I don't require. Consider this a grant with strings. Use it only for 3 things. Caleb's summer library program, the last credit card with the shame interest rate, and 2 therapy sessions for you. Send me receipts. If you don't follow the rules, I will donate the same amount to the sock fund, and you'll tell the group why. I love you. Boundaries and grace can live in the same house. Mom. I put it on her seat at my table and invited her to dinner with the kind of text that used to make my heart pound. Spaghetti? She came. She read. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She nodded and said, I can follow rules. And then she surprised me. She pulled out her envelope and slid it across to me. Inside were 3 receipts, already printed. Library registration, a credit card payment confirmation, and an appointment card for a counselor's office 2 blocks from the school. I assumed you'd do this when you didn't need to, she said. So I did it when I didn't want to. We ate spaghetti, like it was sacrament. The neighborhood group asked me to post one last Nana's notes before summer. I wrote, pay schools, not stories. Put your love in a schedule you can keep. If you can't give money, give chairs. Socks. Always socks. People commented with little hearts and their cities. Someone wrote, my mom needed to read this 15 years ago. I'm reading it now. Another wrote, this is how we stop being a problem for our kids and start being a floor. I pinned it, and then I closed the app and went outside to deadhead my petunias, because even grandmothers who change a county still need to fuss over flowers. Summer arrived. Caleb's robot learned to turn without eating the wall. Bree's sedan hummed across town like an apology that kept itself tuned. Evan stacked enough chairs to start making friendly jokes with the janitor, which is how you know a man has been accepted by the building that raised his son. The portal funded camps, and the district posted a report so clean you could floss with it. The working group stamped the folded chair oath onto the volunteer packets so many times I worried we'd run out of laminate. And then I remembered. I am a grandmother. We never run out of laminate. We run out of patience.
On the last night of the state webinar series, they asked me to close it out. 3 minutes, the moderator said. Something human. I wore navy. I tucked a pencil behind my ear. I stood in the school library in front of a paper caterpillar and spoke to 100 tiny squares on a screen. I am not a hero. I am a woman who was wronged and who stopped paying the wrong person. I built a system so I wouldn't have to build a rage. My revenge is a spreadsheet that outlasts my temper, a portal that doesn't care who's charming, a sock drawer that never runs out in the nurse's office, and a boy who wrote me a letter that said he makes me feel like a building with a light on. I smiled. If you're carrying a hot coal right now, put it down. Pick up a broom, pick up a form. Pay a school. Take the chair cart for a spin. Boring on purpose will save you. When I finished, little hearts popped up like fireflies. I closed the laptop and sat very still until the refrigerator hum turned back into a refrigerator hum, and not the sound of a life-changing. Later that night, I tucked Caleb in on my couch, under my mother's quilt for the last Friday of the school year. He sleep mumbled, "Nana?" And I said, without moving my hand from his hair. "Do you think robots can do chairs?" I said, "Maybe someday, but I hope not. People need boring." He drifted off with his hand open, palm up like he'd caught enough. And I stood in the doorway and watched the small light that is my whole silly heart. I don't keep score. Not like I used to. But if I did, it would look like this. Daughter, accounted for. Grandson, thriving. System, tighter than a drum. SUV, gone. Cart name, consistency. Socks, more than enough. Revenge, completed as designed. Legal, financial, social, and so satisfyingly boring. If you were at my kitchen table right now, I'd pour you tea and hand you a pen. We would write down what hurts and what helps, and then we would pick the helping things and do them without drama until the hurt stops making decisions. It sounds small. It feels huge. It wins. If you're ready for this journey, make sure you hit that subscribe button and give this a like so you don't miss the updates. And let me know in the comments what city you're watching from. It's always lovely to see where everyone is. Now, tell me, what would you have done in my place?
So, another story of my grandmother has ended. And be clicking here, you will have when more such stories.